Very much for coming today. We are here with the candidate for the UCP party, who is Kenney, former minister. But we'd like him to do his own introduction because we'd like to hear what he thinks about himself. So our first question is, can you please introduce yourself to our audience in your own words?
Sure. First of all, Franklin, it's great to be here at Diversity, which is a great institution giving a voice to new Canadians in our increasingly diverse province. I was born in Ontario, grew up in Saskatchewan, but came to Alberta 26 years ago. I started an organization called the Canadian Taxpayers Federation here that fought for a strong economy. In 1997, I became a member of the federal parliament, the House of Commons in Ottawa, representing Calgary, and served for 19 years in the parliament, for 9 of those years as a minister in the federal cabinet. I was Canada's longest serving Minister of Citizenship and Immigration, during which time I welcomed 1.3 million permanent residents, the largest number of any ever immigration minister, and during which time we tripled the number of immigrants coming to Alberta. I was also Minister of Employment and National Defence and held various other roles. But in March, I was elected leader of the Progressive Conservative Party of Alberta, because I wanted to unite free enterprise Albertans into one big, broad, diverse party. And we've created that new party called the United Conservatives. I'm seeking its leadership at the election on October 28th.
Good, thank you very much for that introduction. So you've heard us in his own words. So let's go to the second question. What achievements do you bring from your past political life to Alberta?
Well, I bring, first of all, 9 years as a senior minister of the national government. I led significant reforms to the immigration system to speed it up. When I became minister, when we came to government, there was a 10-year waiting list for economic immigrants. We had to speed up the system, eliminate the backlogs, but also a better geographic distribution of immigrants. That's why we gave Alberta a lot more power to select people through the Alberta Immigrant Nominee Program. We increased that by 500%, which led to a tripling of immigration levels to Alberta. But we also did things like increased support for settlement services, like language instruction for newcomers and other integration support. We also brought in some laws to crack down on abuse of Canada's generosity, like human smuggling and immigration fraud, because we want to make sure that we have a fair, rules-based system. As Minister of Employment, I brought in programs like the Canada Job Grant and the Apprenticeship Grant to help Canadians, including new Canadians, get training so they could find good jobs. And as Minister of Defense, deployed our military to fight the genocidal terrorists in the Middle East. For several years, I was the chairman of the Operations Committee of the Federal Cabinet, which oversees day-to-day operations of the government. And in the past year, one other point, I was sort of the ambassador for the Conservative Party and Stephen Harper's government to new Canadians, during which time I reached out, we attended over 6,000 events in ethnic and immigrant and cultural communities, and we managed to significantly increase the support for the Conservative Party amongst new Canadians, who I think have naturally conservative values, a belief in hard work, personal responsibility, strong families, belief in the rule of law. People who want to pursue and achieve opportunity in Canada, I think they're natural conservatives.
Thank you. With all these achievements, what are the challenges you face?
The big challenge is in the next 7 weeks to win the leadership of the new United Conservative Party. I've been at this for 14 months and helping to create this new party, and I'm working hard then to win the leadership on October 28th and beyond that.
And with these challenges, the question, of course, obviously, is how are you planning to overcome these challenges?
Well, by reaching out to Albertans from every background and walk of life, we're trying to encourage people to get involved. If you want an Alberta that has a vibrant economy, creating jobs and opportunity, and if you want an Alberta that doesn't impose a huge debt on future generations, if you want a prosperous Alberta with an economy that can help pay for quality social programs, things like healthcare and education, then we need, I believe, a change of government, a government focused on economic growth. So my message is to get involved. People can go to my website, jasonkenney.com, to get more information, to purchase a membership to vote in the October 28th leadership, or to volunteer.
So are there things from your long political career that you think you could have done differently?
Oh, I'm sure. Over 19 years in Parliament, I'm sure there's some things I could have done differently. But, when I was at my best, I had a very good rapport with members of the opposition parties, or my opposing parties. But sometimes in the cut and thrust of politics, you end up doing or saying things that are perhaps a little unkind or too aggressive. So I think generally I was a pretty a friendly individual, but sometimes maybe I got a little too aggressive, and I always want to remind myself that my opponents can still be my friends.
Are there examples of some of the aggressive things that you can share?
Oh, well, I don't know, heckling the people in the House of Commons.
Okay, thank you. So
It was never physical.
Okay, that's better. So what's your vision for an inclusive Alberta, and how do you plan to achieve that?
So we already have a very inclusive province, and I hope that we'll continue to benefit from the talents of newcomers in the future. I think we need to ensure proper administration of the Alberta Immigrant Nominee Program so that we are welcoming people who are set to succeed in Alberta. We need to break down barriers to the economic integration of immigrants. For example, too many newcomers face huge obstacles for their degrees, diplomas, and professional credentials to be recognized here in Alberta. That means that foreign engineers or doctors, lawyers, and others often end up working in survival jobs because they can't get their degrees or professional licenses recognized in Alberta. And while they're working in those survival jobs just to feed their families, they get very frustrated, and it's I think immoral for Canada to welcome foreign trained professionals to Canada only to face underemployment. It basically often stuck in the bottom of the labor market doing very basic jobs. So I think the number one goal I have in this area is to approach the organizations that govern the professions, the College of Physicians, the Law Society, the Engineers College, and so on, and tell them that they must give a fast and fair process for the assessment of foreign credentials.
Okay. Another thing on that?
Yes, I think we need the credential recognition is critical, so to reduce the red tape for those credentials to be recognized. But also, I think the critical thing is the education system. Education is the great engine for social mobility. For many immigrant families who come here, many are living in poverty or just above poverty, and they're struggling, and they're working hard, dreaming of a brighter future for their kids. The best way for those kids to have that future is a high-quality education system, and giving them the good instruction. Right now, we have declining results in the Alberta schools in areas like math. We need to turn that around so that those kids have the education to, if they want, go to university or succeed. That's really, I think, why most immigrant families come here. It's for their kids. Let's make sure they have the education that will lead them to achieving their dreams.
So talking of jobs now, Albertans are losing jobs in thousands. What exactly are you going to do if you win the leadership of the UCP party and later on become the Premier of Alberta to help reduce this trend? Yeah,
the number one goal is to renew our economy, restore investor confidence, create jobs. Just today, as we're doing this interview, Statistics Canada reported that Edmonton has now become the city in Canada with the highest level of unemployment. But 3 years ago, we had more jobs than people. Now we have more people than there are jobs. So we have to, job number one for the government will be restoring investor confidence. We have lost tens of billions of dollars of foreign investment from the province in the past year. Second point, we have to repeal the carbon tax, reduce other tax rates as quickly as we can. Third point, we have to reduce unnecessary government regulation to speed up approvals for construction, for oil and gas and other industries. to bring back investment. Point 4, we have to repeal some of the negative policies of the current government that have driven away investors, like recent changes that undermine workplace democracy in the labor law. These are some of the ideas I have to send a message to the world that Alberta is open for business again, bring back investment, so that once again we are creating jobs.
So talking of the repealing the carbon tax, this will certainly affect the Calgary transit system, which is supported by Alberta government. What's going to happen in that situation? If it's repealed, and is Calgary going to lose their support?
No. The carbon tax money goes into the government's general budget, and then the government's general budget is spent on various things. One thing that they've committed to over like 10 years is funding for a LRT line in Calgary. But I announced $1.3 billion for that same LRT line when I was on behalf of the government of Canada when I was a federal Canadian minister in 2015. But the LRT I announced with Mayor Nenshi was to be 40 kilometers, serving communities from the far north to the far south of the city with, I think, 40 stops. Now they have gone down to 20 kilometers and half as much area for the same amount of money. So if I were premier, I would go to the city and say, this is not acceptable. We want the original LRT, and we don't want to shrink the number of people being served by it.
Okay, but it won't affect the LRT project from going ahead. Okay, that's good. That clarification is important. So newcomers to Alberta and of course minorities are chronically underemployed, and of course they face widespread discrimination. Do you have some solutions, some ideas around that?
Yeah, well, I think I addressed that with a focus on breaking down barriers to credential recognition for foreign trained professionals. We need to tell the professional licensing bodies, because there are over 40 licensed professions and then over 40 regulated trades. And all of those organizations that do the licensing are created by the province. So they in a sense, they're accountable to the provincial government. And I would use that accountability to say, we must see a fast, fair process for assessing the education and credentials of foreign professionals and tradespeople. And now we don't want to lower the Canadian standard, but we just want to apply it fairly and quickly. So if people who come here don't qualify at the Canadian standard, they know right away what they need to do in terms of supplementary education or courses, or how they could challenge exams. And another idea I have, one thing I help to support as the federal minister is the Alberta Immigrant Access Fund that provides no interest loans to immigrant professionals and seeking to upgrade their skills or take certification exams so they can get their credential recognition. So, because many of those people are spending their small savings, working a couple of jobs to put food on the table, they can't afford to take time off to go maybe back to a college to upgrade their education, or to study for and pay for certification exam, like certification exam fees can be thousands of dollars. So sometimes they need just a few $1,000s in financing to help them upgrade their credentials in Canada, and they don't have that money available. So the Immigrant Access Fund that I would like to support as a provincial government gives those people a little financial boost so they can pay for upgrading and certification to move from, let's say, driving a taxi or being in a corner store to becoming a licensed professional.
Thank you. I think you've touched most of the questions we wanted. Is there anything you want to add to that?
No, I just want to say I think a lot of your readers are in the African community. We're blessed to have a large and growing Alberta African community in all of its diversity. And I want to encourage all new Albertans, all of your readers, members of the African community, to get involved in our democracy. Let me be blunt. I think most Africans are cynical, understandably, about politics because of corruption in Africa. But people need to understand that in Canada, politics is just a form of, it's just another word for democracy. This is one of the world's great democracies. And we, in becoming Canadian, in becoming Albertan, people have a response, not just rights, but also responsibilities. And one responsibility is to be active citizens. So get involved in a political party, in a campaign, in some way to fight for your values That is one of the great rights that we have as Canadians.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very
for
much.
that. So thank you for listening, and thank you for watching. And you can subscribe on YouTube. You can join us on Facebook. diversitymark.ca is our website.